everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Jade if you are new, and if you are a continued subscriber then thank you very much for watching another one of my videos. Don't forget to like and subscribe as it lets me know what you guys like and what you don't like, and also leave a comment if you do like this video and if you want to see more of them, and I will do my best. This video, as you can probably tell from the title, is going to be a Most Haunted episode review. Now, this was the very first video that I ever watched of Most Haunted, and it's what got me completely hooked on Most Haunted. Through research drove me to find out about cryptozoology and cryptids and a whole different world of stuff which I absolutely adore. So the title of the actual video that I'm going to talk about is called Most Haunted's Halloween Special 2020, Violent Encounters at a Secret Location. This actual video, which I will leave the link of down below, is 2 hours 39 minutes and 51 seconds long, and it is action-packed from the beginning to the end. To start off the video, Yvette always does an introduction, and she is stood outside, and the team were actually asked to keep this location a secret because of how haunted and how violent the encounters actually were at this mansion. So from the very second you start, you think, okay, this must be quite bad for people to not even want anyone to know where this is located. I also really liked the fact that Yvette and Carl's bulldog Watson was there at the intro. I thought that was brilliant. I love bulldogs, I think they're amazing. I also love dogs in general, so yeah, I thought that was really cute too. Yvette actually gives a lot of detail into the background and the history of this building. It's been so many different things. I think it was a school, I think it was a convent, a couple of different families lived there. It's been used a lot over the years. Yvette is giving an introduction to the history of the building and her introduction, and then she says that the rest of the team actually had a lot of encounters before the show even started, and this was in broad daylight. So that was really interesting. The first activity is actually when Greg is doing like a pan of the room, and you can see from the pan that there's like nobody else in the room because of the pan. Now Greg is just in there minding his own business, trying to get this pan shot, and then a chair comes flying into shot and it breaks. I was like, whoa. Greg's obviously quite, okay, here we go, like, you know, and he sort of walks over to it and everything, and he's like, okay, chair's just flown into shot. The show hasn't even started, they're literally only doing the before shots, and a chair has flown into shot, people, flown into shot. I've written it a little bit further down, but I'm gonna mention it now because I want to get this out early on in this video. I listened to this night before last, and I had my headphones on full blast. I nearly deafened myself, especially when Yvette starts screaming, which I don't blame her because I would do exactly the same thing, and I think anyone else would be in her position if you're being true to yourself. But I had the headphones on full blast, and I couldn't hear anything before this chair was thrown. Any of the activity, I couldn't hear anything. Now, I physically listened to it with my headphones on full blast to see if I could hear anything, because I know so many people think that Most Haunted is fake and it's not very good, and I'm not discrediting somebody else's opinion or view, I'm just saying that I personally love it. Now, also, to throw the chair the way it was thrown into shot, I'm sorry, but I think Carl, Greg, Glenn, Stu, Fred, everybody in the team, I'm sorry if I've missed out somebody's name, they are all very capable men in throwing a chair, don't get me wrong, but this was thrown with power, it was thrown with aggression and intent. But if Greg was stood anywhere near where that chair was going to land, it could have really hurt him. So I don't think that the team are just going to start throwing chairs around, plus which they're not going to say, oh, can we come to this location, this house? You know, a lot of these houses are now, they're not like National Trust places, but they are places that people can visit. So the team aren't going to go to these locations and start chucking items around that could break because they don't want to be disrespectful. And I'm sure the people that own these buildings aren't going to say, yeah, chuck a few chairs around, break a few things. They're not going to do that, and the team wouldn't be disrespectful to the location or to the people that own the house now or anything else like that. Greg goes to get Carl because a chair has, like I said, been thrown into shot, and he caught it. He literally was panning, and as he was panning, poof, chair comes flying out of nowhere and actually breaks. The cushioned seat, or the padded seat, actually comes off as it hit. I think it hits the table and then hits the floor. I can't quite remember now, but it breaks. So he goes to get Carl. Carl comes in. They talk about the chair and how it flew into shot, things like that. And then it jumps then to Greg trying to redo his shot from before. So I think the chair is actually still on the floor where it fell from the previous shot, so to prove that they haven't moved it. So two things happen. Greg is doing another pan, and then the table, which is out of shot, gets flipped over. Okay, so table gets flipped over, and you can hear in Greg's voice, he's like, okay, table's been flipped, oh my god, oh, okay. And then as he's trying to look at it, a chair gets chucked. He literally panned across the room seconds before table and chair. Now people, if you watch this, and I've watched it several times, there's no one else in that room. And if there was, that was the other thing I was going to point out as well. If you're going to chuck a chair, regardless of how strong you are, to get the momentum into throwing an item that heavy, you're going to grunt. You're going to be like, "Arr!" or something like that. So you're going to make noise. Again, no noise was done. And also, if you're going to chuck a chair and then leg it out of the room to get out of shot or to get out of being seen, you'd hear it. There's no footsteps running away. And if you're a fully grown male, you're going to make noise. And these old buildings, you would hear it. So again, I'm sorry, I'm quite passionate about Most Haunted. I think I really like it and I get really into it. So I'm going to try and turn it back a little bit. Greg runs out of the room to go and get Carl again and explains about the table and explains about the chair and says he needs somebody to watch his back. Then we jump on to Stuart. I love Stu. I think he's great. His comedial comments and the way he is, I think is brilliant. The person that he is, he just brings so much to the table with his personality, basically. So yeah, Stu is doing, again, he's doing a pan shot of a room. You can see that there is nobody in the room with him, it's just him on his own, and a door slams. Stuart acts pretty quickly on this one. The door slams and he immediately runs around the corner and into the other room. Now there's no other way in or out apart from this fire exit that slammed and the door that Stuart's just come in. No other doors in there, and also there's nowhere to hide in there either. Stu pretty much goes around in a circle twice to prove that there is nobody in there and that there's nobody else around and that those are the only doors in the area. Stu then tries to do another section of his part that he's trying to get for the before shots. He's in the same room as he was when the door slammed, and a chair gets thrown. As he goes into that room, you'll see a chair and it's actually been thrown again into the room. So Stu puts the camera down on the ground and runs towards the chair. Now again, I think that's really good of him. He didn't think of this, but I think it was good that he did it anyway. Because again, you'll hear his footsteps, you'll hear heavy footsteps. And again, that wasn't a light chair, that's got quite a bit of padding, would be quite heavy. The other thing I love about Stuart is when he gets a little bit nervous, or as you would, I'm sorry people, like, it doesn't matter what you're doing, whether it's Most Haunted or whether it's one of the other paranormal channels that are out there, and there are quite a few which I enjoy watching. If you think you're on your own, especially when it's dark, because these guys do things in the dark, like later on they're going down into the cellar and it's absolutely pitch dark because they show you how dark it is down there without torches and the lights that come from the cameras, etc. So, you know, bless him, he says, keeping it calm, guys, I'm keeping it calm, I'm not going to freak out, there's no point in freaking out, and I love it. I think it's brilliant because that's what you would do. You would talk yourself down. You'd be like, right, okay, just chill out. It's fine, you know, this is what you do. You're part of the Most Haunted team. You want this to happen so you can capture it, but you'd still talk yourself down because it's still like, still scary. So then we move into number 8. Glenn and Yvette are talking about the history behind the house. In each corner of the room it has a symbol which related to the Masons. I don't know very much information about the Masons, but if you do watch the episode, again, like I said, I will leave the link to it below. Yvette sort of does go into a bit of detail on it. And also she's saying that there is supposed to be a ghost who likes that room, who could have potentially been a Mason, and he doesn't like women in that room. He sort of likes to whisper in their ears. Then there's a lot of tapping and slight banging going on, knocking is probably the best word, going on behind Greg, who is now with a camera. So there's a lot of tapping going on behind him, and you've also got Stuart and Carl have also got cameras in that room as well. I tried to write down so much information on everything that happened to try and like detail it to you guys. Yvette then turns round and gives the team a little pep talk, which is very, very sweet because I do love how close the team are. They're almost, I would say they're like family together. They look out for each other. If something happens, they panic, they worry about other members of their team. Yvette is very mother hen with everybody in the team. She doesn't want anyone to get hurt, but she loves the fact that they have this togetherness and a passion for doing what they do. So she basically says, look, so much stuff has already happened, please be careful, just, you know, keep in mind that, you know, chairs have been thrown, things like that. And then she turns to Carl and Stuart, who in their own right are renowned for egging on the spirits or the ghosts or the entities, whatever you want to call them, and they do usually try to ruffle a few feathers, so to speak. So Yvette basically says, don't ask for anything to happen to you because you do have a tendency to do that, and she is quite worried that, you know, with chairs being thrown, things like that, that, you know, somebody could get really hurt. So I do love how much she cares about the rest of her team. And then she starts rambling and getting faster and faster as she talks, and then she's like, oh, I'm a bit nervous, can you not tell? And I love that because I don't think it matters how many times you go to a haunted location and they do what they do. It's still going to make you nervous because you don't know what's going to happen. And considering how violent this location is said to be and everything that's happened before, the fact that they can't even reveal where the location is, that would make anybody nervous. Glenn then decides to take the matters into his own hands, and he says he wants lots of things to happen. You know, he said, oh, you know, if you can't follow through and you can't do this and you can't do that, then you're shit. And Yvette actually is like, oh, Glenn, and as she puts her hands to her sort of her neck, so she says, I've clutched my pearls, but I haven't got any on. I mean, I think Glenn was very brave to say that, considering what has happened previously. I do love how respectful the team are. Every time something happens, whether it's a bang, a knock, a door slam, any sort of activity, they always say thank you. And they try to be as respectful to the ghost entities. You know, they're calling out and they're asking for something to happen, and then to not maybe reply and say thank you. Yeah, I think it's nice. I think that's it's a very good thing for them to do. Then we jump into the next segment, and you've got Carl, Yvette, and Mary. Now, it took me a little while to actually realise that Mary was actually Carl and Yvette's daughter. I didn't know that. I thought she was just a new member of the team. Once little things started to kind of happen and she started saying things, you just immediately realise whose daughter she is, because she's got so much of Carl in her, but then she's got so much of Yvette in her as well. And I know that's obviously what's going to happen because she's Carl and Yvette's daughter. She's just so much like her parents. It's crazy, it really is. Then the show actually starts, there is a bit of a funny part to start with where Carl, Yvette and Mary are walking to where they're going to start their talk and the room that they've picked, or the area that they've picked to go in. They walk through a door and start going up some stairs, and Mary shuts the door behind her, but it slams, and Yvette basically jumps out of her skin, and Mary's like, oh, sorry, it was me, the door slammed, and everything else like that. So you can already see that Yvette is on edge and waiting for something to happen. Which I thought was quite, they all have like a bit of a giggle, and I thought that was quite fun. They then jump to Fred. Now Fred is in the cellar, he's in one part of the cellar, and then you've got Glenn who is in the other part of the cellar. Now Fred is in one part of the cellar, he has a large cross with him, and he has his book, which since watching this episode and watching more episodes, Fred is I want to say he's a demonologist, and he, I don't know if it's Latin that he speaks, or it could be, I don't know what it is. It sounds like Latin, but I might be wrong. If you guys know what language it is, please leave a comment and let me know. But he's calling out and using voodoo dolls, and he's asking for them to show everybody at home and people that are watching their power, and asking for things to happen to everybody. He's saying throw things, push people, push things over, scare people. I never know whether that's a good thing or not, considering Glenn and Stuart, they didn't ask for chairs to be thrown around rooms and tables to be flipped over and stuff. They were just trying to do their job and do their panoraming in the very beginning, and you know, the shit already hit the fan and stuff already started happening. So for Fred to sort of like stir the pot and ask for things to happen, I think that could be a bit dangerous and a bit scary. That's just my opinion. Then we jump to Carl, Mary and Yvette. They got to their destination, so they've climbed the stairs, they've got to their destination, and they are just about to ask out, and then Yvette says, you know, is there anybody here? I literally had tears streaming down my face, I was laughing so much. So Yvette literally asks out if there's anybody here, and then a pigeon freaks out, flaps its wings and flies across the room and everything, and all three of them absolutely poop themselves, and it's so funny, and it shows that they're human, that they do react and they are scared, or it does make them jump. And then Yvette says, you know, let's move out of their way, let's go to another room, because she doesn't want to upset the pigeons, who are, you know, most likely that's their home, that's where they roost or nest, or, you know, whatever birds do. And I thought that was very sweet. She was like, no, I don't want to upset the pigeon. It was really, really sweet. As they're moving into another room, Mary thinks she heard like a little moan. Yvette then says, how many of you are here? Like, how many of you are in the room? And the ghosts, entities, whatever you want to call them, I'm going to continue saying ghosts for the rest of this, because it's easier than saying ghost, entity, whatever you want to call them each time. But basically they tap out, and you can count along with them, 20 taps. Yvette says, you know, do you all mean us harm? And not all of them mean them harm. Yvette then turns around and says, you know, thank you very much, it's nice to meet you, and then gets like a 3-tap response, which is almost like the ghost saying, nice to meet you too. A couple of minutes later, they're still in the same room, they're chatting, and then Carl gets this like in his ear, and I heard it as it happened. Another good thing about Most Haunted is they will replay, if there was a noise or something, they'll replay it immediately after, and then they do it again in like slow-mo. But that was loud enough, I heard it as Carl heard it, and then I was like, oh god. And then Carl's like, whoa, okay, we've asked you to call, we've called out, we've asked you to show you that you're here, and we've asked for you to show yourself, so to speak, but you don't need to like breathe or laugh in somebody's ear, like that's a little bit too close for comfort, so to speak. And then Yvette, I don't know how she realised this, but maybe it's just a feeling that she has because she's been doing this long enough, and I believe her. She realises that it's not 20 entities or ghosts, it's one, and it's a very nasty one as well. Mary and Yvette also have gone like really, really cold, which is normally a good sign that something's happening. Obviously there is something nasty going on in that building because chairs and tables and, you know, everything else are being sort of chucked left, right and centre. We cut to Glenn, he's down in the basement. There's a lot of like beer barrels or kegs, I can never remember what they're called, but they're like the metal ones which are really heavy and would cause quite a bit of damage or make a lot of noise if they were kind of pushed over, things like that, and he is asking for the ghost to do anything that's necessary, like tip one over, throw something at it, put anything that proves that there is a ghost or something in that room with him. Then you jump back to Carl, Mary and Yvette, and they are walking through this quite thin corridor. Carl then gets pushed from behind, and he sort of really stumbles and then goes down like on his knee, and he was like, oh, I got pushed, like if somebody put their hands on the small of your back and just shoved you. That's how it felt. I love how Mary is straight in there to protect her dad, and she's like, oh, you don't do that to my dad. Yvette then turns round and says, oh, you know, something obviously doesn't like you. Now, this corridor that they're walking through is literally just leaving the room where Yvette figured out that it wasn't 20 ghosts, it was one really nasty one. After she says, something doesn't like you, Carl turns round and then basically says, well, it can go itself. And Yvette's like, great, here we go, wonderful. Yvette is obviously very worried because, you know, chairs have been thrown, tables have been flipped, Carl has now been physically pushed over onto his knees, or his knee. You know, if a ghost can do that, what else can it do? So for that ghost to have physically pushed Carl, that probably would have taken quite a bit of its energy. Mary and Carl then decide that, you know, they're going to goad this ghost, basically. Yvette is like having kittens. She's just having litters and litters of kittens because she's really freaking out. She can tell that this entity is not a nice one. It's really dangerous and it could cause them a lot of harm. But when Yvette starts talking to Carl, it's not like, oh yes, you know, we need to leave, we need to do this, we need to go, we need to do... She's not even acknowledging the camera now. She is just fully talking to her husband, not her colleague, not her team member, her physical husband. She's like, no, we need to leave, we need to get out of here, this isn't good, this is bad, oh my god, like, no, we need to leave, like, right now. Like, you can tell that she is fully freaking out at this point. Carl and Mary, again, they don't want to leave, they're kind of like, they're still goading this, you know, ghost. Probably not very good, you know, Yvette's probably got a point. And then she sort of was like, I don't know what's wrong with you both. I really don't. Like, you physically just seen what's happened. I'm telling you that this thing isn't very nice, and you two are still, like, trying to piss it off, basically, and trying to goad a reaction out of it, and it's just... oh, she's just not. She's like, I don't get it. I don't know what either of you are doing. As Carl, Mary and Yvette are actually like coming back to leave, so I think they're aiming to come back down the stairs that they went up to in the beginning, and they enter this one room, and then there's a lot of tapping and knocking, things like that. One of them says, do you want us to stay in this room? And the ghost knocks yes. I think it's 2 taps for yes, 1 tap for no. There's 2 taps. Yvette says, you know, there you go, even they're telling us that we need to stay in here. And as they leave the room, Yvette says, you know, thank you for your protection, and they all say thank you, which I thought was, again, it's very respectful. The team sort of split up, and Mary and Yvette go into the cellar. It's quite funny because Mary is obviously her father's daughter, and she's not quite as scared as Yvette is. Yvette is very on edge down here because it's pitch dark. She can only see through, like, the, not the viewfinder, basically. Yvette's like, don't run, don't leave me, don't do this, don't do that, just stay with me, basically, which I would be... safety in numbers, people, safety in numbers, that's all I can say. There's a couple of tappings, and they move from sort of, like, one part to the next, like, one area to another area, and then a cup is thrown. That does freak them out, which is totally understandable. And then Yvette sort of like, I think she sort of goes either on her one knee or both her knees, and asks for another cup to be thrown. Or Mary asks, and then Yvette turns round, and the way Yvette asks for things is actually really, really good, because she almost sort of, not plays to the ghost's better nature, but she was like, oh, we're throwing a tea party and we really need some cups and saucers. And some people might think that's stupid and a bit daft, but I actually think that's quite an inventive way of actually getting something to happen, in my personal opinion. But as she's holding the camera, like, you can see she's shaking because the camera is shaking. Then we jump on to part 2 of this episode. Mary goes off on her own with a camera, and she is basically going through the whole second floor by herself. And when she gets into the room that she's going to be using to ask out in, I do love the fact that as she's on her own, she's changed a little bit. Like I said, safety in numbers, maybe not quite so, oh yeah, come on then. Then Mary does turn around and say, I'm going to use one of my mother's tricks, which is basically backing yourself against a wall in a corner so nothing can get to you. And I think that's actually a really ingenious way of doing it, because I suppose if you're in the middle of the room, anything can happen. So, and she is on her own. You then flick to Stuart, who is back in the cellar. I feel sorry for Stu in this scene because so much happens. He's having things thrown around the room. He's in the barrel room, and there's just stuff being thrown left, right, and centre, and he's freaking out. I would be, because there's nobody else down there. Like, you know, he does the shots of all the different rooms. You can tell there's no one else down there, but where the hell is this stuff coming from? Then you pan back to Mary, who is, you know, moving the camera around, and I do love the fact that even though she's on her own and she might be a little bit nervous, she's sort of like panning the camera around, and she sort of looks and she's like, Jesus, my hair, like it's a complete mess. And again, I just think it's a very lovable little thing that she does, really, to be fair to it. You jump back to another shot of Mary. She is asking out for something to happen. Nothing happens, but she can feel that there's something like in the doorway behind her. She can't quite tell if there's somebody watching her, but she just has a feeling. Nothing's happened when she's politely asking out, so she's like, really don't want to have to do this, but I think I'm gonna have to. And then she starts sort of like getting a bit, not bullshit, but she's like, come on then, pathetic, you know, you can't do this, you can't do that, you're weak. And oh, that really hits the spot. Whatever's floating around that wasn't doing anything before, she certainly got its attention. You know, she's just finished her kind of like, come on then, you're really weak. And then you hear in her ear, mine. And that's all you hear. Oh my god, I jumped again, and I've watched this one twice now because obviously I wanted to watch it again to get the notes. But I jumped. Mary jumps, and you can hear it quite clearly. Mine. And it's creepy. It is really, really creepy. And even Mary's like, okay, thank you. Okay. You jump back to Stuart back in the basement. Basically, he has it's like the bottom of a half-pint glass that's already broke, thrown at him, and he physically can feel it like brush past his head, and it sort of smashes into the wall, and it freaks him out that much he actually falls over. He is freaking out. There's no, I'm going to try and stay calm, I'm not going to freak out like he said earlier. He is full blown like, I've had enough now, I can't stay down here, I've got to go. He then turns around and says like, you know, my nerves are shot to shit, I can't stay down here anymore. And I don't blame him, I really, really don't. This is where like the most activity happens. It's not nice activity, it's quite scary, and I do think that, you know, somebody could have seriously got hurt, especially Glenn. So Stuart is behind the camera, and you've got Glenn and Yvette. The three of them are together, and Glenn leaves his Mac laptop on top of the piano, which he is running EVP, which, for those who do not know what EVP stands for, it is Electronic Voice Phenomenon. And they move into a separate room, which I think Yvette calls the Cunard room. The very first thing I spoke to you guys about, which is the first scene where the chair is thrown into shot, that is the room that they are in. They've called it the Cunard room because there are two curved tables which came from the Cunard Shipping Company, if I remember what Yvette said correctly. I'd say that room had quite a lot of activity in it. So they are in the Cunard room, and Yvette thinks that she can hear something, so that's why they go into that room as well. And then a chair is dropped. You know, like when you look up a staircase, up the middle, there's a gap there, and basically the chair is dropped between the banisters. It lands with such a force that it actually splinters, and part of the chair leg actually breaks away. So they're freaking out because literally, and you'll hear it on the EVP as well when Glenn plays it back, but they literally have put the EVP on, walked into the room because Yvette thought she heard something, and then the chair drops. It's like seconds after they leave the room. I don't even think Stuart's probably fully even through the doorway when it drops, because as he as he goes to walk in, it lands behind him and he's like jumping, flicks the camera around as he turns, and then Glenn is like straight in there with, holy shit, there's a chair, you know, oh my god. That happens pretty quickly. You jump to Greg and Mary, who are in the cellar. Now, I do love how the second there is a noise, Mary is the first one to go straight for it to find out what's there and who's there and all that. But I do love the fact that she still does say to Greg, don't leave me, Greg. And they do have a bit of banter between the two of them, which I do think is quite, again, it's good because Mary is the youngest member of the team in this episode and this video. Then you jump back to Glenn, Stuart and Yvette, and they're back in the Cunard room, but Yvette, she can feel that there is something in the dark corner of the room, and she's like, I do not want to go down there, I don't like it, it's creepy, it's horrible, it's nasty, and I don't want to do it. And I love the fact that Glenn holds his hand out for her, and he's like, right, I've got my hand out, come and get it, and then he's like physically trying to like drag her like forward, because she doesn't want to go, like she's like digging her heels in, she's like, nope, don't want to do that, don't want to do that, which I thought is quite sweet. Carl is actually in the attic space, basically where he had somebody laugh in his ear and where he was pushed, that's where he is on his own. So he is the top end of the building, completely miles away from everybody else, which is kind of scary considering if something happened to him, he'd be on his own. You then pan back to Glenn, Stuart and Yvette, and they are going to go and check the EVP. And then as they go in, Glenn actually physically sees this chair, like, not being thrown, but he sees, like, you know, as you look up, the chair just goes, whoo, like, so he physically sees it. It's absolutely crazy because he's like, right, okay, I have physically seen this. It's all scary. Like, this last section is probably the most activity that happens. In amongst all of this, Stuart, bless his heart, he swears a lot, he says the F word quite a bit. He then apologises and I think he tries to stop himself. But in all honesty, I think if I had chairs being thrown left, right and centre, I think the F word would probably come out of my mouth quite a few times. And again, it just shows that you're human. And, you know, it's not for entertainment value, it's not for swear value, it's literally like something's happened and you're like, fucking hell, like, oh. It's just what comes out of your mouth in that second. Like, you don't even think about it, you just say it. Then you jump to this one section of Glenn, Yvette and Stuart. They're both stood at the bottom of the stairs where the piano and Glenn's Mac is, and they're listening to the footage that they've caught so far. And obviously you can hear Glenn and Yvette and Stu chatting away, and you can hear certain, you know, you can hear other things. Then you hear this noise, which is like a tap, 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 and they're trying to figure out what the hell it is. And it's basically a chair being loaded at the top of the banister or wherever it is above them. Like, when you drag a chair, like, the chair I'm in now, it's like a high back chair, but if you drag it, it makes that kind of, that's not the noise it makes, but that kind of noise. Again, if you watch the video, you will hear it. So they basically are saying that you can hear the chair being loaded, because as much as they couldn't hear that before chairs actually were dropped, the EVP picked it up because it's in the room where they are not. And they obviously didn't hear this at the time. So they're like, holy shit, like, this is a chair being loaded. There is nobody up there because you can see, as they are doing this as well, they will show, they will have like little screens come up in the corner, in the corners of the screen that you're watching that show in that moment where everybody else is or where other parts of the team are. And you can there's nobody there. As they are listening to the EVP, Yvette can hear something above them, and she's like, oh my god, there's something above us, there's something above us, like, oh my god. And they're all quite close together, and then another chair is dropped, but it is thrown almost at Glenn. How the chair actually missed Glenn, I will never know, but I do like the fact that Glenn actually sort of like shields Yvette somewhat as that happens. And they're all freaked out by it, like, seriously freaked out by it. They pretty much wrap up the investigation, and I don't know where they go after this, whether it's still in the building or whether they go to a pub or somewhere where they're like based to where they go after the investigation's over, because obviously it's quite late as well. And they're going over the footage, and you can pretty much tell that Glenn is pretty shook up, to be fair to it. So that's pretty much all the notes that I have taken throughout that 2 hours and like 39 minutes of watching the episode. I will leave a link to the video down below so you guys can watch it. Leave a comment, let me know what you think, and if you like it, if you didn't like it, if you think it's fake, whatever, I really don't mind. I am happy to sort of like chat away with whoever, and I will be doing more review videos on Most Haunted and giving my opinion on them as well, so I will see you all in my next video. Bye!